soccer obviously is the main sport outside of the US.
Right.
Right? It's the biggest
crazy,
it's
yeah.
the biggest international sport. But America is just late getting on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
And so I love the fact that now like soccer is becoming more popular here, but the reality is that the MLS, don't hate me, don't kill me, don't come at me for saying this, but
I know what you're saying.
the MLS like skill level, it is not comparable to overseas.
Yeah, no, you're spot
You know what
on.
I mean? And that is why like a lot of homegrown players, a lot of like American players, that's their goal. They strive to like get picked up by international teams because number one, that is like the end all be all. Like you can't get bigger than playing in Premier League or La Liga or one of these huge teams, number one. And then on top of that, they pay way better.
No,
like the money is ridiculous when you
It's
play
insane.
overseas. So I would love for MLS to take soccer that seriously and it not be something, you know, secondary. I would love for them to try to like really pursue it being on the level. And I know it's not going to be tomorrow or even next year, but I would love to see MLS end up being on the same level as like a Premier League or something. And that could be like an actual like, you know, same caliber type situation.
So, your honest opinion,
Interesting.
from your experience, why do you think America has a perception over soccer overall? Why we like just like kind of shun soccer for so long?
Well, I think it's because we were not, a lot of America wasn't introduced to soccer like that. It took so long, you know what I mean, for America to really be introduced because it was, we changed the name.
Yes,
We
it wasn't
changed
even
the
soccer.
name. It's not supposed. It's football. Like it was football for years and years and years outside of the country. And when we decided to, adopt the sport, we said we're not going to call it football. We're going to call it soccer.
You know, it sounds pretty on brand for how things typically happen here in America. This is a whole other conversation that we can go into here because we like to take things and rename them and claim them because soccer is only soccer in the United States. Everywhere else, it is literally football. Yeah. But I do agree with you on the sense that, like, I know in my family, I always say my sisters and I were first generation soccer players. Like, my parents played basketball. I have relatives that ran track, they played football at a very high level, profession and everything. But soccer wasn't even an option. It wasn't even something that they knew really existed. The same way that like lacrosse is now kind of picked up and other sports are becoming more household recognized, I should say. But around the world, soccer is the sport kids are playing in the streets, in the yard, all over the place. You know, I've heard stories about players. In fact, all the way through Makanya was mentioning how he wouldn't even go to class sometimes because he'd be playing pickup soccer somewhere. We don't have that in the United States. It's very much big on only having it structured, monetized. It's very expensive. It's not accessible. So I do feel like the U.S. is catching up slowly, and it all connects back to our Julian Carranza conversation about the union not being able to afford to keep him. To your point, the league as a whole is not able to afford to keep players. It's not even just a Philadelphia Union problem. What we're seeing is an MLS problem. So many players get to the top of the MLS and then end up playing internationally and making millions of dollars. I mean, the salary for the average role player is like more than what a top DP is going to get on some of these MLS teams. It's ridiculous. The difference in salary, the difference in opportunities, the difference in talent. So as much as we talk about like now what for the union, it's also now what for the MLS. How many times are you going to have top players, leading goal scorers, golden boot, front runners and winners and MVPs, champions that end up playing in a different country, making bank. And then also like this wanting, as you mentioned, the aspiration is the MLS is a stepping stone in reality.
Right.
Whereas for other leagues like the NBA and the NFL, that is their final destination. Like your goal is to get there. Yeah. The goal is to get to the MLS. And somebody made a comment before, basically the MLS is the minor league to the majors of the Premier League, La Liga, leagues like that. That's the sad truth, though. It's a bigger issue,
it's becoming apparent. Yeah. To the point that you have like American investors that are not investing in MLS, but they're going overseas. Like they're going Jay-Z and his Rock Nation Sports. Like I think Vinny is one of the people that he has signed to Rock Nation. Right. And
they also have Jack McGlynn of the Union. Rock Nation does. And
there are more.
Soon.
I mean. Listen, Rob McElhenney, just with Wrexham and everything, we're seeing more and more people that are investing internationally and not investing back into soccer the same way. Right. So that's a good point. It's a really big issue that the United States as a whole in terms of soccer, men's and women's soccer. Women's soccer is getting better because it also helps the U.S. women's national team, and the women's soccer has just been more successful in the United States. But in reality, the comparison to other leagues, financially, talent-wise, it's difficult. They're playing catch up, and they're behind the 8 ball trying to compete to keep players. When in reality, as we mentioned, the goal for most players growing up is to be in the Premier League, is to be in the Champions League, not to play in the MLS. Or, as we mentioned with Messi, you do get the opposite of players that want to come here to live in the States with their families and be able to live in a nice area like Miami or LA or New York, whatever it may be. And this is their retirement plan versus it being their final destination to stay and have a nice lengthy career. This shouldn't be the retirement spot.
It does feel right now like we're kind of at a standstill with our popularity with the league, because Messi came in, it was fantastic for Miami. You see so many pink and black shirts everywhere. Yeah. But what does that mean for the rest of the league? Where is the fandom? Where is the love for a Chicago, for a Utah, right? Like, it doesn't feel like everyone is growing at that rapid pace, and it's not. And this is an important point, because we have Copa America this summer, which is a big international tournament, and then the Super Bowl of it all for all of us American soccer fans is going to be the World Cup in 2 seasons. And where are we at with this right now? Where are we at with the popularity? So it's not just a Philly thing. There's a lot of markets that are going through the same things that we are. And we have to find a way to continue building this, because we're kind of at a standstill right now, popularity.
I'm praying to God that when World Cup comes here, that will somehow invigorate, like...
It did in 94.
Invigorate, like, either... lazy fans to be active fans, or to just invigorate people who were not fans at all to really like open their eyes, like, because when World Cup comes, it's gonna be insane.
Oh yeah.
Wild.
People are gonna be traveling from overseas to come to these games, and they're in like how many cities at this point? Like it's like 12 cities or something. So, and Philadelphia is obviously one of them. But I mean, when World Cup comes, it's going to take over the country like by storm. So I hope that it shows, like, people, especially doubters, that this is a monster. You know what I mean? And it's worth supporting.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It'll show this is worth investing in. Yeah. This is not, and I heard this for the WNBA, but the same thing applies here for the MLS. It's not a charity league. It's a league worth investing in, because the future is bright. And it does feel like they've hit a ceiling, and they have to figure, I know Jose was saying in the chat also, various comments are saying, K-Red, you're saying, like, I feel like I can't get invested. It is tough. I mean, K-Red, you're being honest. As a guy that doesn't know anything about soccer, this is what you're saying. I'm just reading it for those on podcast platforms. He's saying, as a guy that doesn't know anything about soccer, that's what keeps me from watching MLS. I can't get invested. They don't have the same draw. There are a lot of people that don't even like soccer the same way as maybe like we might, but will watch Premier League games.
Wake up early
Champions
to watch
League
the
match.
Prem.
Yes. I know so many people that can't tell you anything about the MLS. Don't really pay attention to soccer, period. They're not soccer junkies in that sense, but they like the Premier League.
But the room's full of Manchester United stuff.
It's different levels of playing.
It is.
It's a different level of play. It really is. And again, I love the union. I love soccer, like, completely every league, but it is a different level of playing.
94 started the league. So we're hoping 2026 excels us to being one of the big leagues in the world. And to my argument with the quality, like, I get it. This is America. We like the best, and I get that completely. But there's so many countries throughout the world who don't have the best league. Yeah. And they're so passionate about their team. And I'm just asking for like a little bit of that passion to come for your local MLS squad, because like if you've done like the whole Union experience, like it's so cool enjoying it with your fellow Philadelphians, having that beer, talking about whatever you may be talking about locally, right? And I want that to continue growing in every single market. And so it's going to get there. Yeah. 2026. It's going to get there, but got to show that local love.
That is the key. You see people in bars watching soccer games. You see people, when they go to the game, they're on their feet the entire time. They're cheering. They're excited. They're wearing the jerseys. They're trash talking. Some of that same passion that we have in other sports doesn't always translate into soccer the same way, but we see it in football around the world. So it is a real conversation that needs to be had of what potentially is the ceiling for the MLS. Are they going to lock it in just being a tier 2 league that just is a feeder program for other leagues? Are they going to try to truly compete with the Premier Leagues and Champions League and La Liga and things like that? because otherwise you're going to continue having plenty of teams like we're talking about with the union across MLS that are sick and tired of losing their best players. You build up a team, you get to the MLS Cup final, you're winning championships, you're winning Supporter Shield. Oh, but there goes 3 of your players to any league in Europe. Like, it's a lot.
I interviewed Stephen A. Smith one time.
Hey.
Oh boy.
And I don't know how people feel about him. I love him. But I interviewed him one time, and it was off mic, but I asked him, I was like, what are your thoughts on soccer? I was like, do you think that soccer will ever become a main sport? He said no. He was like, I don't see soccer ever being a sport that competes with baseball, basketball, football. He was like, it's always going to be secondary. And I was very upset about that.
I like that you're doing great work of making sure to get that question out there to people like Stephen A. Smith, at least planting the seed. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people that just don't take it seriously and really believe it's not going to be a major league in the same way. It's especially in the United States that it's not going to be able to compete. And I don't know what the answer is to change that. We know money is a big part of it.
It's that is where it's at now. But like I said, I hope that it does change. But I feel like the only way it's going to change is if the owners make the decision to change it.
Yeah.
Well, here's another thing too. A lot of what the Stephen A. Smiths don't realize is that the younger generations are the big part about it. I mean, look at your kids. You're teaching them at a young age. I mean, for myself, I was blessed to have a grandmom and cousins that taught me the sport because I wasn't going to learn it here in America.
Yeah.
And so the younger generations now have access. The internet is the flaws that it has also has a lot of pros. You know, I remember being in high school, looking at YouTube videos of what's going on in Spain and the Spanish leagues. The internet has been able to help the younger generations find the sport, and they are actually liking it. So as these generations get older, that may be able to help our popularity.
Right, and that's the time. That's the time it's going to take. Like you said, not overnight, not even in the next year. And it definitely is. I compare it to where women's sports are because it's the same conversations. Now the difference is the talent isn't fully there in the MLS compared to other leagues. But in general, the overall way that people are investing it, the people in charge, you have to have good business minds in charge. Like we talked about with Kevin Durant, you need to have owners and investors that truly understand the sport and the direction it's going. And I'm not saying Kevin Durant does or doesn't. I'm just using him as an example. But you need to have people that are truly interested, bought in, want to take the league and the team to the next heights. And that's going to help it be a long-term, bigger, league versus short-term, that quick success we saw with Messi, the quick success we saw with even, Suarez, Busquets, the whole Inter Miami squad. That flame has burnt out. It's fizzled. Now what? Now what you had the Apple TV deal that rolled out. You launched all these, everything following Messi from the moment he wakes up to the moment he goes to sleep to what color his toothpaste is. I was going to say underwear, didn't you? And also, following everything around Messi. There's literally a camera following him around the field. But what are you doing to now, as you mentioned, expand that to other teams, similar to what the WNBA is trying to figure out with Caitlin Clark, similar to what we're seeing in other leagues.
I love the personalities of WNBA, and that's why people are watching them. And that's something MLS can do. You
get some beefs.
That too. But emphasize these players' personalities. People like that type of stuff.
Bingo.
I'm a huge Angel Reese guy over here.
Exactly. So hopefully we're going to continue to have these conversations and actual progress be made, actually being able to keep these players.